Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Responsive Weekly. My name is Noah Barnett, and I am so grateful to be back with you all. I missed last week. I was super bummed. I know that Megan and Taylor had a great time and a great chat. So thankful for you all to be here again and get to spend the next 28 minutes. Megan, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Noah. Hi, everybody. Great to see you. Great to see some familiar names in the chat, and welcome to anyone who's here for the first time. I'm really excited about our topic today.
Absolutely. People said that maybe there's reverb. Is my audio okay, Megan?
I don't hear any myself.
Okay, great. Well, we'll just keep rolling. I'm so grateful that we have a brilliant guest with us and a newer friend, Erica, has joined us, who's the president of a direct solution. Hey, Erica.
Hey, Noah. Hey, Megan. Hey, everybody. Great chat there.
We're so grateful for you all being participants every single week. For those that are new to this conversation, it can be super intimidating. So let me demystify what's about to happen a little bit before we go ahead and jump in. So as you've already noticed that the chat is very active, you'll want to keep the chat up the whole time so that you can follow along in the conversation. If it is your first time, no worries, you don't have to jump in. But this is a participation-driven event. This isn't your typical webinar where Erica, Megan, and I stand up here and chat with you. We want to make it collaborative as we dive into today's topic, which is what makes a great monthly giving program. We're going to be talking about this question. So let me actually jump off the slides because we want to really just dig into this. So Megan, do you want to set us up and kind of seed where we're going to go today with Erica?
Absolutely. So questions we've been seeing for a few weeks now in the chat are, what makes a monthly giving program different from any other kind of giving program? What separates a monthly donor from a not monthly donor? And is there a different way we should be engaging them? Is there a different way we should be treating them?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Erica, you're the expert on this. So we have lots of questions for you, but let's kick it off with that one. Like, how should you treat monthly donors versus regular donors differently? Or maybe the same, I don't know.
That's a great question. So, and that was not one that was sent beforehand. So it's like on the spot here.
Welcome to the hot seat. That's how this works.
So yeah, I mean, you know what, it's really, I think the thing is that you have to look at monthly donors as people that are really committed to your organization. They're really buying into your organization. They're really invested. So so I would say you want it. And the old school was like, okay, once somebody's a monthly donor, you forget them, you shouldn't be bothering them anymore. Well, that is totally changed, right? So you should absolutely engage your monthly donors in whatever you can do to engage them with. And, you know, if you're a bigger organization and say you have a major gift program, there may be some things that they're doing in major giving that you can tag along with or can borrow from. Like, say if your organization does like a town hall event, you know, or a donor conference call, something like that, I would absolutely invite your monthly donors to take part of that because they care about your organization. The only difference is between a monthly donor and a major donor is that they're just not contributing a huge amount yet, but they're going to be giving for many years to come, right? And in many cases, they're even leaving you in their will. So again, they're really buying into it. I mean, that takes a commitment to say, yes, I'm going to, you know, set up an automatic gift to an organization. So yeah, I mean, engage them. And you know, some of the tests that we're seeing is that you can actually see if you can isolate them, which I highly recommend anyhow, that you isolate your monthly donors in your email group, in your database, so that you can track to see if they respond different. But you can see that if you're sending an email to a monthly donor, typically the open rates are higher and the click-through rates are higher. So, so again, just like, so just because they're monthly donors doesn't mean that they don't care or that you should stop communicating with them. They're really committed to you.
Yeah, I think what was interesting, Erica, and it was at the beginning, so I didn't want it to get lost, so I'll highlight it, is you said there was this like belief that you should not bother monthly donors, sustainer donors. You should almost like get them to subscribe and then don't remind them that they give to you.
Right. Yeah.
And it's such like a backwards strategy. And I remember because I ran a monthly giving program for a while. And that was the thing, is like, do we really want to thank them every time they give? Because then we're reminding them that they're giving to us, and the goal is for them to forget, so they keep giving to us. And it's like, that's such a weird strategy when you think about donors continue to give when they feel connected with and have confidence in your organization to work on a cause the donor cares about. And so it's your job as a steward of that subscriber, really. You know, if you think about, we're living in a subscription economy,
right?
How do we cultivate to actually express the value as to what they're subscribing to, which is, you know, a monthly giving program, or as many already said, you know, they have quarterly donors or annual donors that give on a repetitive basis and are committed to that. So definitely engage. I loved what you said, Erica, about isolating the monthly donors, not because you're going to treat them differently or neglect them, but just so you can really see how that cohort of supporters engages.
Right. And I think, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing is, like, you know, because once you have them like broken out, you can absolutely say thank you for your ongoing monthly support, or thank you for being part of, like, you know, whatever the name of the community or the monthly donor group is that you have created. I think the concern is a little bit the transactional piece. So I think if you know, if you're used to like sending receipts, and if your system sends out receipts, I would, you know, if you can suppress those and replace them with thank you for your ongoing support, let me tell you a story of how your gifts are making a difference, that's ideal, right? So it's less about the transaction, because you kind of want them to forget a little bit of that, but you want them to say, oh yeah, wow, yes, I'm part of this community, and I can see the impact of my gifts.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's interesting too is we did that exact thing, but we did what I think Leslin, maybe is how you pronounce it, was mentioning, where we actually had a cover letter on the receipt. So we still sent the receipt every month or every quarter, every year, but we had that impact letter every single time, and it changed every month. The other thing we did was we sent a reply device with that every single time, and people would send one-time gifts back to us on a regular basis. And the one thing I always thought was interesting is that it was like, oh, monthly givers are monthly givers. It's like, no, that's just, it's almost them telling you that they want to be engaged with your organization deeply. And we actually still saw an increased engagement rate from our monthly donors in our other campaigns we ran. So they were giving one-time gifts throughout the year in addition to their monthly commitment. The other thing we did was we would slowly increase the monthly gift. And so methodically, like, we would sub-segment the database, and this starts getting into how do you like optimize and scale your monthly giving program, which I know a lot of people are just getting started, or they have fledgling, which I thought was a brilliant word. I want to use it this week.
We're going to change that. So,
but there's so many ways to optimize it. So before we go into the weeds of monthly giving, let's kind of zoom back out and talk about what are like the core elements of someone that maybe has monthly giving, but it's been fledgling, they're just getting started. What are kind of the core components, Erica, that like you have to have a successful sustainer monthly giving program?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the must have, I mean, I always start with this, is you have to have somebody in charge who's actually passionate about it, believe it or not, right? So it can't be like, yeah, so-and-so did it, and so-and-so's doing it, and it's kind of part of their job, but they're really, you know, so you really need to say, hey, you know what, we're going for it, right? Okay, so we're going to put somebody in charge, okay? And that doesn't mean that that person has to do everything, but it means that that person is really sort of tracking on what happens, right? And I think this, so you know, so especially if you have like a small program, I saw somebody says, well, does 6 count? Yeah, hey, it's a start, right? You know, so let's double that, right? So let's triple that, right? So it's like having that person in charge that's going to say, yes, I'm going to go for it, right? Because it doesn't happen if you're like, yeah, you know, I kind of want to do it, but I don't know, you know. So you really need to say it's an ongoing like messaging, really. It's really like saying, yes, we're going for it. And every opportunity that we can possibly find to mention monthly giving is great, right? I think the thing is, like, again, look at your donor base, look at your email list, and how many of those are giving you less than 250. Right. So, so kind of like maybe start there. So it's like saying, okay, I'm really going to try to focus on some of these, like what are like small donors right now, and see if I can, get them to give monthly, and basically upgrade their gift and build a more loyal relationship with them. So, I mean, virtually everybody now has the tools, no matter what system you're using. I mean, but if you don't, I mean, but I still see a lot of organizations that they have a one-time giving page and they have the monthly option on there, but then they don't have a separate monthly giving page. So you need to have a separate monthly giving page, because that's what you're going to direct to in your marketing, in your efforts, right? So if you don't have that
I
set
just
up,
want to spotlight this, that monthly giving program is not a checkbox on your donation form. It can be, but
it's not, right? It can't, I mean, it's absolutely part of it. So it's one way to start planting the seeds, and some people will do that. But it's definitely more than that. But also, I mean, I saw somebody says, well, what do we need to do in terms of benefits and things like that? So I would recommend, like, especially if you're starting out, keep it simple. All right. I know everybody's busy, right? And, right now we're a little bit slow maybe in terms of events, but that's going to happen again, right? So, so just kind of keep it simple. So I always recommend that, if you create a monthly donor community or a monthly donor group, and come up with a name, brainstorm about it. Don't spend oodles and oodles of money or time on coming up with a name, and then move on, because you really want to start promoting it, right? But then say, like, once you join as a monthly donor, you're going to get updates from us. You don't have to specify that it's going to be a bi-weekly update or a quarterly update or whatever, right? It's just like you're going to get updates from us, and you could maybe get invited to a town hall event or something like that, if you have that and you're going to actually do that, right? And then I always recommend that you tell them up front that they're not going to get monthly receipts in the mail, because most programs say just like they're trying to get away from that, but you're better off like using an appeal, to ask for additional one-time gifts, but that you're sending a tax letter in January, February, right? So that way the donor knows, okay, I don't need to keep track of it. They're doing it for me and they're going to send me that. So that's a service. But other than that, you're better off like saying, hey, do I have something surprising, right? So because most monthly donors and most donors don't necessarily want all those tchotchkes. You don't need to give yet another tote bag, or because it just like donors don't want you to spend the money on it. They much rather have you help more people or students or kids or animals, right? So but yeah, so those are a couple of things. Like, think about what I call them, the promises. What are you going to tell the monthly donor that they're going to receive as benefits, but don't necessarily think about them as they have to be really tangible. Rather look at them as saying, okay, they're, like, what would make them feel really special? What would make them feel part of the organization? It might be a virtual tour. It might be, a special email with like a message from a client that you just helped, right? That's saying, wow, you've made a difference.
Yeah, I think go ahead.
So no, I mean, I'm kind of looking at the chat there, so it's like, oh my God, I could answer questions all day, right? But I mean, it says one of the questions was like, in those appeals for one-time gifts, would you recommend acknowledging the fact that they're monthly givers already? Absolutely, yes. So that's why, again, if you have that special segment, you say, thanks so much for your ongoing monthly support. You really make a difference. And then, but let me tell you a story about Fluffy, right? So absolutely. And the same in the email, in your e-news even, you have that option to recognize them. Make
Eric,
them feel special. Go ahead.
well, this was another question too, because I think like right now in this space, right, we start talking about the relationship. We're describing these donors as the relationship they have with us. They're giving to us monthly. However, my biggest thing, and I've advocated and designed many monthly giving programs, is you need to change the name. Like, and what I always do, like, you have to come up with something. You know, someone mentioned on here before, like gosh, there was called Preemptive Love has one called the Front Lines. I think they recently changed it, but it was called the Front Lines, which aligns with why they would continue to give. So there was innately in that packaging, that name, there was that thing. I created one called the Collective, because collectively on a monthly basis, we were helping fund training for women in impoverished communities. And that idea of being a collective. The Spring is a great one, Tim. Bringing that up.
Catalyst Circle, I see here, Kupanda, you know, so yeah.
There was one that I was just on a call with Courtney, who's at the Piedmont Park Conservatory, and they call them the keepers, because in some ways, you know, again, like they're the keepers of the park. They're they're supporting this. So I think to BC's question, acknowledging that they are a part of this thing, is it? Or if you don't have a name, at least saying, hey, we're appreciative of your ongoing or committed support, then here's the suggested next steps. And I think that just goes back to being responsive. Tim, yes, Piedmont Park is in Atlanta. Yep. Just being responsive is that you want to acknowledge what they do. You want to connect, and then you want to suggest next steps. It's kind of like if Netflix emails me tonight and says, hey, you watched this awesome documentary last week on the creative brain. Here's 3 other documentaries that we want you to engage with. There's no difference between what Netflix does and what you should be doing with these committed givers, these sustainer givers, or these committed or people to your cause. So we've talked about the elements of what a program is. The one question that did come up in the chat earlier before we started talking about tax receipts, which is no fun. We don't talk about tax receipts on the weekly.
Nobody is an accountant.
We'll come back to it. It's just, we'll talk about receipts later. But someone was saying, like, how do you grow your program? Like, let's say you've committed, you said, yes, I have a person, we have some structure to this, we're being intentional. Now, how do I grow this? Or what do we do here?
And I wanted to pick up what we had from someone. Sorry.
Go ahead, Megan.
Go ahead, Megan.
Said, if you've got some monthly givers already, but you don't have a program, so you invent something that is the Spring or whatever, you roll those donors right into whatever you've got going, right?
Absolutely.
You don't need to.
They're
the foundation of your monthly.
They're the foundation, right? And you know, I actually was talking to an organization, and they had done that. They just changed the name, and they said, you know, their earlier monthly donors was like, you're the foundation, and I just want to let you know we've just changed the name to these the monthly donor community, and you're now part of this, right? So absolutely, yes, you can absolutely like roll them in. So that's really helpful. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, monthly donor programs, a couple of things. One is they permeate the whole organization, right? So you can have some major donors that are giving monthly, right? And part of this program, right? So, and you can, you know, like depending upon how big your organization is, you might have somebody responsible for bringing in new donors, and somebody else responsible for retention. And, you know, so it kind of depends a little bit on your organization, but I would always start in saying, what are you sending to your constituents now, right? And where can you add in the monthly giving option? So in other words, if you have appeals, I would definitely, and if you haven't tried it yet, and I've tested it with a couple of organizations, is test a tick box. I mean, it is a tick box on a appeal reply form, right? And see what happens, right? So it's kind of like part of a little seed planting, because it's like you have to do a lot of like planting of the seeds to say before it kind of like, it's like, oh yeah, I saw that. Okay, you know. So and put a little, you know, like put a little nudge on your donation form online. Add an extra button in your e-news, in your emails. I mean, I've literally helped an organization, what do you call that? Like they had 50 monthly donors. They're now at like 350 monthly donors in a couple of months by just adding a button in every email they do. Donate now, give monthly, right? And it's like, and you know, again, you link to that monthly giving page. So, and then once they get to the page, you say, you're now part of a special group, blah, 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 right? Put it in your print newsletter if you have a print newsletter. You know, again, social media, a lot of social media activities that I'm seeing, it's like you're trying to get a donor to make a one-time gift or do one call to action. And then as a follow-up to something that they've done, you say, thank you so much for doing this, or thank you so much for your donation. Would you like to step up your support even more and, you know, join this special monthly donor community, right? So, so those two-step approaches work really, really well. And again, you have the systems, you have the emails. I mean, it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg. It costs you a little bit of time to kind of like say, where can I add these opportunities? And again, I think once you start seeing the power of monthly giving, and once you, I mean, I always recommend annualizing the value of your monthly donors. So even if you have 6 monthly donors, how much are they giving you a year, right? And then, okay, so now, oh wow, I already get like $1,000 from 6 monthly donors. That's pretty powerful, right? So, or maybe $2,000, right? So, and then whenever you grow, you kind of like start almost like once a month, you might do like a little update to your boss or colleagues and say, hey, we just got 12 new monthly donors from this activity and they're worth XYZ, right? So it's always like kind of like even sharing and sort of almost like telling yourself how well you're doing, right? By just kind of like keep repeating that, because that's really what it comes down to is like. But again, see where you can add in monthly giving opportunities, and then just do it. And I mean, I worked with an organization, and they did they now have a quarterly monthly donor drive. So every quarter they have an email series, they do some social media, I mean, they do a direct mail campaign, and they have a phone campaign. So everything is focused on driving as many monthly donors into the mix. And they were like blown away the first time they did it. It's like, oh, wow, I know, wow, you know, they generated a lot more monthly donors than they'd ever seen before, but they were committed to it, and they kind of everything was coming together.
Great. That also brings us to, and you touched on it a little bit, I know people were curious about costs of acquiring monthly donors versus other kinds of donors. And for me, my guess is that the ROI is return on investment is really, really worth whatever it is, but I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, it's totally worth it, right? So again, it depends a little bit on you know, what kind of channel you're using. But if you look at the fact that, and again, you know, it totally depends on your organization. But if you see right now that the average monthly gift is $24 a month, so that's $288 a year, right? So if you, so as long as the cost to acquire a monthly donor is less than $288 a year, you're breaking even, right? So, so that's one. So again, if you're using email, the cost is not very high, right? If you're starting to look at like, you know, advertising, Facebook ads, you know, things like that, it can get a little bit more elaborate. I mean, I work with organizations, if they, you know, again, if you have a tick box on an appeal form, the cost is virtually nothing also, right? So if you have to do a special appeal for that purpose, then typically what happens is say you're only mailing 4 times a year to your donors, right? And you think, okay, I have some room to add in 2 special targeted appeals, just focus on bringing in, inviting donors to this monthly donor community. Then you obviously, then you consider the full cost of that appeal for the purpose of monthly giving, but you are also going to bring in one-time gifts. So that kind of comes off the top. So, so one of my organizations, for example, they do that, and they see that the cost is about $70 to generate a monthly donor. Right. So $70 to generate $288, right? That's a really nice return on investment, right? I think if I remember Charity Water that does pretty much everything digital, they're looking, I think they were like looking at like $140 to raise, to generate 1 monthly donor, right? So, so it runs the gamut. But if you're doing stuff via email, welcome email series, thank you emails after somebody takes an action, the cost is virtually nothing,
Mhm.
right?
And I think too, you just hit on something that's really interesting, and we should have like a monthly giving 2.2 or 102 class, and then
Yes.
a 202 class, and a 301 class. Is someone asked, like, are we worried about proselytizing to our annual donors, or like basically taking away from other programs? And I think what's interesting about that is monthly giving can't be seen as a subsector of your donor base. Like, your donors are your donors, and there's different ways that they can engage with you, and really integrating monthly giving across the donor journey. Because it's not even just, someone mentioned at the top of the hour, oh, we do a February campaign to boost monthly giving. It's like, why not include that as part of your new donor welcome series every day? You know, like every time you get a new donor, like, how do you do that? Like, why does it need to be isolated to February? You can do that, but how do you find these creative moments? The other thing you mentioned, Erica, that I want to highlight as well is driving success within monthly giving requires you to celebrate when you grow your monthly giving program internally.
Yes.
And so making sure it's almost public, like, hey, let's put it in our Slack or in Teamwork or in our weekly emails and say, hey, like, we grew by 5, 10, 2, 100. Celebrate these wins, because that's how you make it a part of everybody's job at your organization. That's brilliant advice, Erica. We're almost out of time. And is there any questions?
I see some wonderful, great questions. Oh my God. So I'm get a copy of the chat, right? So we could definitely have a couple more sessions on this. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, Megan, was there any of the other questions that were submitted ahead of time that we can do like a lightning round with Erica really quickly?
Sure. So we got, is corporate monthly giving an option? Is that a thing that exists?
That's a great question. So here's the thing. I'm a small business, right? So I'm a company, but I'm also like a person, right? So if you see that in your area, you have a lot of like small businesses, right? So corporate, then I mean, what do you got to lose by asking, right? So in other words, if you're sending appeals to corporations, most bigger corporations are more like sponsorships or what have you. But I've worked with one organization where we reach out to the employees. And we ask the employees to consider making a monthly gift, right? So that's a way that, rather than going for the big corporation, is like you say, can we work with the employees to offer them to give monthly? And then and so in other words, as a whole, they're giving monthly. So that might be a way to be a little bit creative. But small businesses, individuals, absolutely, they're totally fine with monthly giving, right? So you have nothing to lose by to try. So yeah.
Someone's asking about trinkets or like PBS style.
The
Chomskys.
Like,
is it worth it? Is it not?
I don't, if you don't use stuff to send in your appeals right now, so if you're not an organization that sends calendars and t-shirts and address labels or whatever, you don't need trinkets. You're better off, like, if you can get a match, $5,000, get a couple of donors or a couple of board members together and say, hey, we really want to double our monthly donors this year, right? So, and can we use a match? Matches are like almost much better than trinkets. So, and they don't cost you anything, right? So, and then you don't have to worry about the whole fulfillment and things like that. So I would try a match before I would worry about the trinkets. So, and again, just a nice little thank you card or something, that makes it makes a donor feel special when you get it. That just does an amazing world. And I do recommend, like, no matter how people joined, that you do send something in the mail to them that they can hold on to, that has your phone number, your contact information, that if they have questions, that they know who to call. Throw in your business card and say, wow, thank you so much for coming, doing this.
Well, Erica, we're out of time, and we took a minute extra of your time. I know you have to jump, so feel free to do that. Thank you so much for your time. We'll definitely be talking about this a lot.
Great.
On this, and Erica will likely have you back on the show. So thanks for joining us. I know you have to jump. We're going to do a little bit of wrap up here on our end.
Thanks.
So thanks
Bye,
so much.
guys. All right, keep up the good work. Double your stuff. Yeah.
Thank you all for being part of today's session. We're so grateful that you all show up every week, and we don't take that lightly. Thank you all so much for being here. One quick note, if you haven't gotten, the responsive fundraising kit that we put together, feel free to take advantage of that. Megan will include details on that as part of her follow-up. Again, if there's other questions around monthly giving, keep sending them to Megan. I want Megan's inbox to be flooded, because what that enables us to do is make sure we're curating the right content for the community that's gathering every week. As Will said at the top of the hour, we want this to be the best 30 minutes of your week and the most valuable. And so we condense it, we pack it full of value, and we do it every week. So Megan, any other final things before we close out for today?
Everyone enjoy the loud truck sounds that are happening on my end now. And it's so great, the kind of questions we got ahead of time this week. That was really exciting. You are always welcome. If you get the Tuesday email and think like, I know exactly what my question is for Thursday, feel free to send it my way. We try to include as much as we can. And I also, in the recap this week, will send you a link to my survey where you can tell more about what you want to see at the Responsive Weekly. We are super open to your feedback, and we want it to be great for you.
Yeah, Megan, so grateful that we get to do this together every-ish week. There's some weeks that we won't be on. I won't be here next week.
Oh, no.
So unfortunately, but Megan, who's our guest next week? Let's precede this.
We have Sarah Landman joining us.
Oh, and she's from Insightful.
Yes.
Insightful. Great.
Insightful,
yeah. So we're going to have a brilliant conversation on how you can listen well to your donors and how you can be a part of that. I'm sad I'll miss out on it, but Megan will be back next week to hang out with you all. Thanks, everybody, and have a good rest of your Thursday.
Bye, everyone. Cheers.